There's a really big problem with Sims 4 Worlds, and worlds have changed a lot since the base game. When The Sims 4 first came out, everybody was complaining, why are there no open worlds? We just went from The Sims 3, which had these huge open worlds, to The Sims 4, which is smaller. The reason why is actually because The Sims 4 is a pretty badly performing game. It's not really meant to simulate that much happening at the exact same time. If you look in the smaller Sims 4 worlds, for example, this starter lot area with all these different starter lots in Willow Creek, as well as the houses, there's not really much going on outside. The only add-on area is we've got this tree, which as we know leads you to the fairy grotto, and we've got a fishing spot and we've got a frog log, but you can't really explore anywhere outside of this tiny area. You can't even click on the road. We've got this small little gardening patch here too, but in general, this area is very, very small. We go into, throwback to our bunker let's play. Where I made Shanice live in a bunker. Hey there, Shanice. How's it going? If we look at this area as well, this is the road where the pancakes live. You can explore this very tiny area around the houses. The only communal bit is this park here, which doesn't have anything in it other than a couple of benches and a barbecue. Sims can't even walk like all the way up here. Again, there's just like a little fishing spot. I don't know if there's actually anything else around here. It's pretty small and lackluster, but that's the point. The Sims 4 is not meant to be simulating these big open areas because it literally can't handle it. Even the same in Oasis Springs, the actual navigatable area here is just a road. There's not really anything to do here other than a small vendor and some planter boxes in this tiny corner here. This is how Sims 4 worlds are supposed to work. They're supposed to be small so that if you do see randomly generated townies walking by, it feels more realistic because it's such a small enclosed space. It's like there's nothing going on, but because it's so condensed, it feels busier than it actually is. Then we move on to Get Together, which apart from the Get to Work world, which didn't really count, this is the first main world we got in The Sims 4. The first thing I would like to express, guys, is, oh my God, these randomly generated townies. What are they doing? What are you doing dressed like that? What are you doing? But this was the first world where things got a lot bigger. We went from a tiny little neighborhood to this huge open space, which honestly has so much potential. Obviously, it's nighttime right now, but whether it's nighttime or daytime, it's pretty much as dead as this. We've got all this navigatable space, but not really anything to do. And it kind of defeats the whole point. Like, what am I going to do? Grab my sim, get them to sit on a bench? It's not like you can click on a door like this and make your way into a secret club or something. Wouldn't that have been a great idea for all of these random doors in the Get Together world? These random bits of grass space that you can't really click on or do anything with. This whole entire town square is pretty much always dead, day or night. So is this square here. There's literally nothing to do here. And now I've just moved us to this big space in the Get Together world as well. And you don't really see that many Sims. There's actually pretty much just as many Sims as there was in Willow Creek or Oasis Springs, idly walking around. Oh, of course, Judith Ward is here. They're idly walking around. But the difference is because it's so big and open, it just looks extremely empty. The city living world is also bad, but it's not that bad. And that's because they've actually made this a lot smaller, but they created the illusion that it's bigger by adding a lot of backdrops with fake people walking around down here. If you go down, you can see that they're not real at all. They actually look more like Sims 1 characters. But even then, with this being smaller, it's still relatively dead, although the main area is slightly more concentrated. The issue comes in more recent worlds where Sims have demanded, we want open worlds, we want open worlds, and EA's tried their best to offer that, and I feel like it's making Sims 4 worlds worse, and it's a real big problem. The latest Sims 4 pack for rent came with Tomarani. This world only comes with 2 neighborhoods, which is very small considering that it's an expansion pack. But then when you come in the world, it's absolutely huge, and you can navigate everywhere in this world. You can walk all around these buildings, even near all these buildings which have no functionality. This is probably on the more extreme end of the Sims team trying to create the illusion that there's an open world when there's not an open world, and it's a shame that they don't work with their original restrictions of Willow Creek Creek and Oasis Springs because it just ends up making The Sims 4 look like a ghost town. In the trailers, they kind of marketed this area as like a big bustling market, and in the trailer they tried to use some clever cinematography where they made it look quite busy and bustling to create the illusion that that's what would be happening if your Sims lived in this world. But then when you come to this night market, which starts at 6 p.m, you'll see it's not really that busy and bustling. Even the market stalls, they don't actually have any Sims operating them. Only a couple of them do, which totally breaks the immersion. And weird things like randomly generated townies sitting on a bench with a bicycle hat and snow boots. Even this like fish market, there's no vendor outside, even though you're supposed to click on it. But then we've got a totally dark, empty one next to it, which has got nothing. And not just the night market of this world, everywhere really. You just kind of see Sims walking around, but they're not actually doing anything. I have played in Tomarani for over 2 in-game years over my review and my Let's Play of the pack, and I've never once seen a child in this play park here because the game's coding simply doesn't allow for it to happen. And that's the issue. The Sims 4 is built to have these very tiny enclosed neighborhoods where a small concentration of Sims can gather. But in order to appease Simmers' cries for an open world, they've given us these kinds of spaces which don't really make much sense. San Sequoia is another horrific example of this. This one actually comes with this humongous area here. Granted, we're seeing it at night time. In daytime, to be fair, you might see a couple more townies walking around, but this area is literally just a huge lot of nothing. There's nothing you can click on or interact with. You can only really just walk around. And I feel like most of us don't even look at these spaces. We don't go to them. It's not like you can click on this greenhouse here and actually interact with it as a rabbit hole. It comes with this water park, which is never ever full of Sims. Only your Sim will be in this water park, nobody else's. You will find no kids on this monkey bar here. EA are trying to make every single world big. I feel like they're trying to appease Simmers who are saying, hey, we really want to have an open world in the game. The issue is it's not an open world. The reason why open world worked in The Sims 3, in my opinion, is because there were always tons of things to do. And The Sims 3 had a lot of rabbit holes, but those rabbit holes existed in an open world where you can go around and you could explore anywhere and there would always be something to do. Whereas in The Sims 4, you explore and there's nothing to do, which defeats the whole point of an open world. And especially because it performs so badly in large spaces because the AI is quite dumb and because it can't support that many Sims on a lot, let alone Sims who are actually interacting with things and doing things, it just ends up looking like a ghost town compared to The Sims 3, which was also a bit of a ghost town with its open world. But when you zoomed in on certain lots, Sims would actually come to the lot and it was slightly more clever in my personal opinion. In some cases, the vibe is right. So if you're in the werewolves world, of course, it kind of looks better the way it's quite deserted and you look around and there's nobody really here. You might find the odd annoying Sim doing press ups, but in a big open space like this where it's meant to be secretive and there's a few werewolves, it makes sense that it's a little bit more dark and eerie and there's not really anybody there. But then every now and then you might see a werewolf walking around. It makes sense. But then when you're in a world like Copperdale, which came with high school years, you would expect a pier with fairground rides to be absolutely bustling, especially on a Friday night in game, which obviously unfortunately isn't, which defeats the whole point of having these kinds of spaces, because if there's nobody here, literally what is the point? And that's why I've always said these kinds of spaces where you have all this big open space, it's a problem. And I think in order to resolve the problem, even though Simmers say we want bigger worlds, I genuinely believe we need smaller worlds, or at least smaller neighborhoods within the world which only have a couple of lots in them with just a road. There's not really anything the Sims team can do because of the way the Sims 4 was coded, but the Sims 4 definitely has this problem of they like to give us what we want, but they give it to us in a way that we don't want it. And this is apparent, in my opinion anyway, for the majority variety of things in The Sims 4, and with the worlds themselves, it's ever so apparent that this is the case. We've got spaces like this in the horse ranch world, and if you go into a lot like a bar lot, Sims will spawn in the bar lot and they'll be doing things. But if you take a look outside of the lot and you just look around, granted it is 2 p.m. but even if it wasn't 2 p.m, even if it was in the middle of the day, you would catch nobody sitting on this bench, nobody in this area here. You wouldn't find any NPC townies riding their horses on these barrels and on these jumping rails. You wouldn't find anybody going through the shops. You just wouldn't find anybody anywhere outside the lot that you're supposed to be on. Call me controversial, but I genuinely think we need more loading screens for The Sims 4. I mean, we may as well embrace the fact that The Sims 4 is a loading screen simulator anyway. So with that being said, I personally would not be unhappy if the town square in Chestnut Ridge was its own special lot. And then when you click on it, when you load into that lot, you'll see more townies around the market itself. I would be more than happy for the Tomarani night market in this bottom area here to have its own special lot, which when you load into it, you'll see even more Sims interacting with the market and it being a lot busier. I personally would love to see smaller closed off neighborhoods which have a lot more going for them, whereby the neighborhood is just a road and then all the activity goes on in the lot itself. That's my personal feeling of how they could resolve it. I don't know, because I'm not a coder. If you are into programming, maybe you could let me know, because in my personal opinion, it helps to make neighborhoods like Oasis Springs and also Willow Creek feel a lot more immersive, because there's nothing going on in the streets, because that's how The Sims 4 is coded. So all they do is give you a street, and just ignore the grand castle estate here. But when they try to step out of that and they give us, for example, here in San Sequoia, 4 lots, but we've also got a cinema and all this other random crap in the middle, suddenly it feels less immersive, because there's all this open space, but the game isn't designed to have anything happen in those spaces, which makes it feel very Silent Hilly. This area of the world is particularly bad because you don't even know which area is interactable and which area is not unless you look at the mouse cursor, because it all just blends in so well. It feels absolutely huge, but there's literally nothing going on with all these different open squares and spaces. And it just feels like a big waste of time for the Sims team 2 spending all their resources building these huge worlds when Simmers are not going to be interacting with them. Tell me right now, when was the last time you brought your Sim all the way over here to sit on this bench and thought, wow, this is really riveting gameplay, getting my Sim to walk here and sit on a bench? Or why don't we just walk all the way down to over here, where my Sim can just stand in the middle of the road and do nothing? There's a whole lot of nothing spaces which could so easily just be avoided if they simply didn't exist and they focused on providing depth of gameplay in smaller spaces rather than a breadth of space but with no gameplay. You guys let me know if you agree or disagree with my opinions about The Sims 4 Worlds. I just wanted to share my frustrations with them and how I think they could be improved by actually making them so much smaller, just like the base game worlds. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one.